Moving right along on this governing and governmentalization, we are now at governmentalization of sustainability. It's now to elaborate, it's now time, I don't know what I'm saying. It's now time to elaborate on how complex sustainability challenges become something governable on the societal level in the first place. So it's important to understand that once you defined sustainability and mapped out the risks and so on, you have to figure out what is governable and how it can be framed to make it governable, so that then you can governmentalize the sustainability challenge. This section is divided into two parts. First, it examines four constituent processes of governmentalization before relating them to the impact of lurking neoliberalization. That sounds like a pejorative, but let's see what that means. I'm fumbling a little bit because I stood in line for a couple of hours to get some government documentation, which is always stressful, plus very hot outside. We are in a heat wave here in Mumbai. So with that excuse, four constituent processes of governmentalization, approaching the governmentalization of complex sustainability challenges from the perspectives of governmentality and new institutionalism, requires a systemic consideration of how regimes of practices become institutionalized. It's about studying processes rather than the processed. Such governmentalization is never simple nor homogeneous, but composite and multifaceted. It has at least four constituent processes: reductivization, where you simplify the problem to make it understandable and governable, let's say; projectification, where once you have the preferred state defined, you want to see how to get there through projects and programs; responsibilization; and commodification. So here we are with this. To summarize, reductivization is one of the constituent processes of governmentalization of complex sustainability challenges. It refers to the conceptualization of complex problem as smaller, disconnected parts. So this is the modularization that we talked about to avoid catastrophic failures in governing, let's say. Okay, so I obviously skipped a lot of text and jumped to summarize reductivization because I'm much more interested in providing sustainability principles. This book has incredible number of good points, but these details on how to govern it may not be necessarily something that everybody wants. Plus, I'm not really an expert in this either. The four constituent processes of governmentalization, then you have reductivization, projectification, responsibilization, and commodification, and obviously they are all related to each other. So here, conceptualizing a complex problem in smaller disconnected parts, so modularizing the problem with reductivization. Obviously reductivism always means you're taking a complex problem and somehow simplifying it to make it understandable, explainable, and ultimately governable in this context. In projectification, we're addressing a complex problem through piecemeal projects. So you divide the problem into projects that will add up to the whole once they're all coming together. So there is obviously synergy and integration. Responsibilization is transferring responsibility of a complex problem to an actor with less power in society. So sustainability as a whole is a huge challenge, and it is obviously a problem of governing and governmentalization, but also collective action with leadership and all the ships that we talked about before, friendships and I don't even remember all the ships that we talked about, but each actor has to have some part of the responsibility so that everybody is working towards the governmentalization of sustainability. So you can think of it as decentralized, modularized governing of sustainability. Commodification includes comprehending the solution of a complex problem as standardized modules sourced on the market. So the market forces have to be considered as part of the solution and not as people who are just selling things, buying things, or collecting data and trying to market things to you, but are actually also working towards the all of sustainability as part of the governmentalization. So governmentalization as projectification, then the second constituent process of governmentalization is tightly linked to the first and concerns how the issue is addressed. Whilst the problem is clearly complex, as described above, it is usually divided into more or less arbitrary pieces addressed in detached projects. Each action, for example, a detailed development plan, the dike protecting from coastal floods, or the restoration of agricultural drainage. So these are individual actions that are part of the overall sustainability challenge and part of staying on the sustainability pathway as a whole. So each action is turned into a project with its own objectives, activities, actors, and budgets. I refer to this process as projectification and define it as the process of addressing a complex problem through many piecemeal projects. It comprises, in a sense, an essential part of the technology side of the conspicuous fragmentation in the governing of complex sustainability challenges, with the rationality side being covered by the process of reductivization elaborated before. Okay, so Boltanski and Chiapello 2005 show how the project has become not only a dominant form of managing formal issues in both corporate and public spheres, but also a vehicle for personal fulfillment, as we'll see with the prop in a minute. Individual actors engage in projects with particular objectives and are rewarded when the project ends and the stated objectives are met. So there is a deliverable from a project where people are responsible, there are workers, there are actors, there is a budget to complete the project, and then at the end there is some form of expected deliverable, and that ensures that stated objectives have been met. So then they moved on to the next project, perhaps even more interesting project, creating a sense of meaning and accomplishment. Sometimes projectification can become just pieces of projects moving forward without integration. So integration is obviously a very important part as well. This phenomenon is pervasive in both professional and private life. Projectification, meeting the project's objectives, is thus the principal goal of actors. Obviously there is somebody above who is looking at each project, each action as a project, and integrating it to meet the overall sustainability goal as well. So the prop for satisfying project completion and moving on to more interesting projects all the time is that projects are ubiquitous in both professional and private lives. So everybody tends to have a to-do list, especially a new year starts with a new year's resolution of to-do lists. Then there is doing, and some people are good at following up the to-do list, some are not, and then many are good at getting things done, and some get lost along the way. But in a sustainability challenge, you have set up a structure with actors, budgets, and leaders and governmentalization that makes sure that you start with to-do defined, to doing and getting it done, and goals being met. So maybe I should stop here and come back to governmentalization as responsibilization. This one is already about 10 minutes, 9 minutes. Maybe I'll read a little bit more. Sorry about that. So governmentalization as responsibilization, what does it mean? The third constituent process concerns the allocation of responsibility amongst actors. So obviously once you have reductivization and projectification, you need responsibilization. The responsibility for governing many different sustainability challenges has emerged relatively recently. As mentioned, this responsibility is not even distributed between various actors, but largely concentrated to certain actors depending on challenge and context. I refer to this as responsibilization and define it as the process of transferring responsibility for a complex problem to an actor with less power and without appropriate resources to assume this responsibility. So how to engage communities, individuals and actors other than communities and individuals, maybe firms and corporations, to be part of the projectific or getting projects done. There is a rich literature using concepts of responsibilization to describe and explain how subjects become responsible for aspects of social life that were previously the duty of another. So usually a state actor would be responsible or not recognized as a responsibility at all. It is most commonly considered in relation to individual subjects, but can also refer to collectives of private citizens such as families, households and communities, as well as to organizations. So this all maps onto Elinor Ostrom's framework of institutions with actors, arenas, situations, rules, norms and so on. We are calling them with different nomenclatures here, but they are essentially doing the same thing, whereas Elinor Ostrom's work focuses on specific projectified sectors like irrigation being managed, or you know, I don't know, you can think of many things like agriculture, shared resources, commons, etc. But then it comes to scaling up. Here we are not talking much about scale as of now. We'll come back to that. Household preparedness campaigns have been critiqued for responsibilizing citizens. So ultimately all citizens have to feel as they are part of the problem as well as the solution. So they have a responsibility to solve this problem that we have collectively created, even though the emissions over time have mostly been due to rich countries, but now even India and China are big emitters, and everybody is getting there with improving standards of living and so on, right? So I'll definitely stop here and come back and discuss governmentalization as commodification. So we'll do that, but you get the idea. Just bit theoretical but still very practical. So we'll come back and continue.